Well, as we officially have flipped that calendar over to 2024, what's the weather outlook shaping up to be here for the month of January? I know we will discuss South America and the U.S., maybe some winter weather perhaps on the way. We're going to talk about all that and more. Joining us for a weather conversation today, we welcome in and say Happy New Year to Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Eric, good to catch up with you. Hope you had a great holiday season. And you know what? I know for me and probably you and a lot of folks, pretty mild holiday season for Christmas and into the new year, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, December for much of the upper Midwest and Northern Plains finished as one of the warmest on record. In fact, numerous climate reporting districts, starting from Illinois to Iowa to Minnesota, Wisconsin, parts of the Dakotas, it was the warmest December on record. And that's typical of El Nino. There were certainly El Nino flavors to this, but it was helped out by the fact that it was really cold in Russia, Greenland, and Alaska. If you got cold in those spots, you can't get it into the central part of North America. So we missed out on it. Now, there were some places that had some good Christmas snow, right? Came out of parts of Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, pretty hard with a good punch there of some snow right there on Christmas Day, causing major problems. And then the days following that was just nonstop blizzard warnings and such a mess. But here we are looking at the stats, and that was about the only significant event we had the whole month.
Yeah, that was outside of that. There wasn't much else to really talk about in the month of December. We're going to circle back to the U.S. though, because we potentially have some stuff in front of us next week that I want to talk about. But I know a lot of folks, a lot of the focus we had in the month of December was on South America. A lot of folks are watching what's been happening in Brazil and Argentina and how it translates into the markets and more. So what's the latest you're seeing? Let's start in Brazil. How are things looking there as we start the month of January?
All right, how about just 10 seconds of recap, right? Super heavy rains in September, rain shut off in October, November, most of December for much of the center west region. So we had places up there that were the driest we've seen, at least going back to the late 1970s. In some data sets, it goes all the way back to 1942 before you can find a drier year than this year for that center west area. It got really hot. We know that the crop really slowed down in its planting progress. A lot of it got replanted and then planted late. So it's quite vulnerable. The crop counters all shifted around because of that. So where are we now? Well, big things have shifted around. El Nino plateaued. We've got the MGO running over the top of it, and they're finally starting to draw in some tropical moisture into the Cerrado, into Mato Grosso. And that's why the forecast over the next 10 to 15 days, some spots are expecting to get there might be a couple places that pick up a foot of rainfall. Now you look at that, and maybe based on the way the markets are trading today, if they're trading weather, I don't know if they are, but it was a major downturn early in the day. A lot of folks are saying, "Oh, it's because of the weather, because of the weather," and I would just make this statement about it: this isn't a good situation. What they need is about 4 inches of rain. They need that, every 10 days to make sure the crop finishes well and they can get into harvested. If they get too much rain in the center west area, then now we're getting into a problem where it's too wet to harvest the beans. They're already vulnerable because of the stresses from heat and drought, which means the stand quality is probably not good. All of this excessive rain could actually do two things. One, cause major problems with the quality of the bean that's there. And two, as they start to work toward harvest, make it so that it's difficult to get in the fields. So I don't see this as like a big blessing of rain that comes through and fixes all the problems. I think it's going to be, I think it's a bigger issue than what we're giving it credit for. And here's the last thing. What if it stays like this? What if
Mhm.
it's the models are wrong and it's not just wet for 10 to 15 days, but it's wet for 30? Now all of a sudden you're going to add to the fact that the facts I just shared with you and make that safrinha crop go in even later. So I look at all of that, and I'm trying to look for that silver lining in all of it. There's going to be some places that'll absolutely do better in this, but it'll probably be the center and south areas rather than the northern growing areas doing better. So yeah, big market adjustment because of it.
And I know this, I've had a few people bring this up to me, and I'm no agronomist, but obviously, between you think about North America versus South America, Brazil, the different soil types they have in
Mhm.
Brazil, and how the rain affects the different soil types, et cetera, and how much more or less they need. I know that's all going to be taken into consideration here, but I would agree with you. I feel like this is a very critical next couple of weeks in terms of how this weather pattern goes, what it does for the timing of the safrinha corn crop, et cetera, Eric. It's very important.
It is, and I can make a comment on this, and just to say, and I don't want to make this too blanket of a statement here, but if you have that much dryness for so long in certain areas, doesn't matter if your soil's sandy or if it's, this beautiful ground I got out here in Illinois, it does become pan hard, which means some of the new heavy rains, first thing they do is run off rather than soak in. So I still think that's going to be an issue, but certainly, some of this moisture will get into the ground and help some things out. But
Mhm.
I don't know, man. I'm not overly optimistic about it, and it's gonna be a tough forecast going forward for the middle to end of January for southern for Brazil.
How about Argentina? We know they've been doing pretty good. They've gotten rains. They're largely been catching up from the recent drought. Things still looking pretty good down there.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, I just looked at some of the newest NDVI data. Whereas last year they set the new 20-year low in NDVI values, this year they're well above them, the top 25% in terms of NDVI. So things are looking much better there. Drought's been broken, a lack of real significant heat. In fact, at times it's even been a little cooler than average. So as they finish up, their planting now and start working their way into the season, I imagine most of those growers down there are seeing this year as possibly doubling up on last year. But remember, last year was half a normal, so looks pretty good in Argentina.
Okay. Let's bring it back home to the US. I've seen some early chatter and scuttlebutt weather models saying we could have a fairly big winter storm next week, Eric. What are you seeing? Give us the rundown here. What are the early weather models saying? What can you tell us for certain, if anything, here about a week out?
Well, let me add a little context to it. Right now, what I'd love to see is to stay pretty mild until the moisture comes through. And the reason for that is I want the soil temperatures to stay above freezing so that anything that comes through the Midwest gets soaked in. Because the reality is that our subsurface soil moisture, that root zone soil moisture across the Mississippi Valley is still low. Mississippi River is at 4.5 feet below low stage this morning. And we need the moisture. Now, it makes for really mucky conditions, which is no good for livestock. But I'm thinking about later this year what it could do. So what we have is we have four potential systems working their way across the country in the next 10 days. First one is south. It's going through right now. The second one's coming into California later today into tomorrow. And that's going to be the first one that eventually gets to the East Coast and dumps a bunch of snow up the East Coast. The one that most of the people in the Midwest are watching is one that follows that. It's next Monday. That one's supposed to come out maybe through Arizona, New Mexico, get into the panhandles, and then head straight toward the Ohio Valley. So that system puts snow from Colorado and Kansas through Missouri, Iowa, Illinois to Wisconsin, Michigan. And some of the forecast models have put down a lot of snow in that area, which means next Monday when we're talking, there'll be a pretty good chance that you will just start off asking how much more snow are we going to get out of this, should it be the way that it currently looks. Now, this is just for the fun of it that I'm going to give you this stat, but the reality is that if the forecast that was released today or the last couple of days, if they verify, there'll be parts of Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana that will get more snow out of this system than they saw all of last winter. And the same could be said of the system before it that's going to go into parts of New England, because those were areas that last year didn't get the snow. All the snow last year was in the upper Midwest. It was in the Rocky Mountains of Sierra Nevada and the Cascades. So we had a grand total of 9 inches of snow in Champaign-Urbana, where I live here, last year. And if this next system verifies, as the GFS said today, we'll get a foot. So the reality is, I want everyone to listen to me carefully here. We don't know. We do not know where the heavy snow bands are going to be. It could really transition a lot over the coming days because it's still 6 days away for this big system that's coming through the Midwest. Now 5 to 6 days away. So be careful what you consume on social media. There's a lot of folks out there that just post whatever they feel like posting, weird snow liquid ratio, and they say it's going to be the end of everything.
Hmm.
And just remember that when all that hype builds up in your head and the actual event occurs, sometimes it's either a major letdown or you start charging at us meteorologists. But those of us that are sane in our forecasting know to tell you that a lot of things are going to change between now and this weekend.
Just keep your eyes on the forecast and stay on your toes, and we'll watch it here over the next couple of days. Eric, before we wrap it up, anything else you want to mention or anything else you're watching around the world here this week?
I think one of the bigger things that'll be discussed between you and I and other folks for the next 6 months is El Nino has plateaued. It's there. It's not nearly as strong as earlier forecasts, but it's going to fade, I think, relatively quickly by the time we get towards spring. And if it fades quickly into summer, I can't believe I'm going to bring this up today because it is our first recording of the new year. I'm getting kind of worried about next hurricane season. Okay. So I've now set myself up for 9 months of worry on a hurricane season, but it's something to watch when El Ninos crash like this. It doesn't tend to be a bad thing for the Midwest, tends to be drier for the cotton belt in summer. But man, if we get a big hurricane season going, that could be something really to talk about. So, hey, I just guaranteed that you're going to keep calling me back for the next 9 months, and so we'll we'll go from there.
We'll take it. We'll take it. Find more online, ag-wx.com. Eric Snodgrass with Nutrien. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.